I'll just start by saying how much I deeply respect the passion of the speakers that we heard from during this discussion. Vancouver has been long recognized as a leader on climate action, and I believe most people in this chamber share the same broad goal: reducing emissions, building a more sustainable city, and leaving a healthier environment for future generations. But I also believe we have a responsibility to ask difficult questions when policies begin colliding with another defining challenge we face: the lack of affordability. And that's what this motion is about. We're living through one of the worst housing affordability crises anywhere in the developed world. Families are struggling, seniors are struggling, young people increasingly wonder whether they'll ever be able to afford to stay in a city that they grew up in. At the same time, construction costs continue to rise, financing costs remain high, and every additional layer of complexity, duplication, or regulation imposed by government ultimately gets passed on to residents. That reality matters. And I think we have to be careful as policymakers that we do not become so focused on regulatory ambition that we lose connection with the lived experience of the people we're trying to serve. Because climate policy does not exist in a vacuum. Policies succeed when citizens believe they are practical, fair, and achievable. They succeed when people feel that they still have agency and choice in their lives. And they succeed when governments remain connected to economic reality. They fail when they don't. What concerns me is the risk of policy overreach and when we ignore the weakening support for these initiatives. Not because environmental goals are wrong, but because public confidence can erode when people feel the costs are continually rising while flexibility and affordability continue to shrink. Around the world now, we're watching governments grapple with this exact challenge. We're seeing a political backlash emerge when citizens perceive policies as economically punitive or disconnected from their everyday realities. I don't believe Vancouver should ignore these lessons. And I think it's worth reflecting on the broader discussion happening nationally as well. Even leaders strongly committed to climate action, including Prime Minister Mark Carney, are increasingly speaking about pragmatism, competitiveness, energy security, and economic resilience. There's a growing recognition that the environmental progress and economic sustainability must move together. And frankly, there's an irony here that shouldn't be lost on us. British Columbia continues to support and expand LNG development as part of our provincial economy and energy strategy. And at the same time, Vancouver is increasingly moving toward restricting the use of natural gas within our own city boundaries. While global supplies of energy are increasingly in peril, how we use our sovereign energy supplies matters more than ever. I think it is reasonable for Council to ask whether our approach remains balanced and proportionate, noting that this motion does not abandon climate action, nor does it prevent innovation or electrification from continuing to grow. What it does ask staff is to review whether Vancouver's unique regulatory divergence from the rest of BC continues to make sense in the middle of an affordability crisis. We're the only municipality in the province operating under our own standalone building code. That has real consequences for builders, manufacturers, designers, and ultimately renters and home buyers. If there are areas where regulations are increasing costs without clear evidence of meaningful public benefit, then we have a responsibility to review them. That is simply good governance. And I want to emphasize another important point. Leadership does not always mean being the furthest out ahead. Sometimes leadership means finding durable solutions that citizens can realistically support and afford over the long term. Because if we lose public confidence, if people increasingly associate climate policy with unaffordability and declining quality of life, we risk undermining support for the very progress we're trying to make. I believe Vancouver can continue to be a climate leader, but we must remain a city that is affordable, economically competitive, and grounded in practical reality. And that's why I'll be supporting this motion today.